Contrary to what you've been told, kosher does not mean a special rabbinic certification on the restaurant or the product that you're eating from. In fact, kosher has nothing to do with anyone's certification other than God's. So to find out the laws of kosher, open the Old Testament, and there everything is written very clearly. When it comes to all forms of plants, that is permitted to eat. Plants, fruits, vegetables are all something that we can consume without any worry. The prohibitions begin when it comes to animals. So, be it a mammal or a bird or a fish, that is where you're going to have to look out for some laws. An animal that does not have split hooves and chew its cud is not considered to be kosher under the laws of the Torah. So, sheep, goats, cows, deer, and animals like that are kosher because they chew their cud and they have split hooves. But a horse, which does not have split hooves, or a camel, which does not have fully split hooves, or a pig, which has split hooves but does not chew its cud, or a rabbit, or a rodent of any kind, all of that would not be allowed to be eaten according to the laws in the Torah. Insects of all kinds are considered detestable and are not allowed to be eaten, no bugs. There is, however, one species of insects that the Torah does allow. As it says, all creatures that walk on four, that fly, shall be detestable to you. However, the creature that has hind legs that are higher than his other legs, to spring and jump upon the earth, that is kosher for you. So that would be locusts, grasshoppers, field crickets, and bush crickets, which are insects that fly and have jumping legs to spring upon the earth. When it comes to birds, all predatory birds are prohibited. Eagles, hawks, falcons, vultures, and owls. There are other species of birds that are prohibited as well. Ostrich, raven, seagull, pelican, storks, hornbills, and bats being flying creatures that are not kosher. The kosher birds would be the birds that are not in this category, and the ones that we use for meat, like chicken, turkey, duck, quails, pigeons, doves. All of those are kosher birds. When it comes to fish, fish must have fins and scales. So salmon, trout, tuna, all classic fish may be eaten. It's particular when it comes to fish like eels, which do not have fins and scales, or sharks, which do not have scales, or lobsters, shrimp, crabs, which are simply just the crustaceans of the sea and are not even fish. All of that would not be permitted to eat from the sea creatures. Reptiles of any kind are obviously prohibited as well, because as beasts and animals, they have nothing that even closely resembles split hooves and chewing their cud. Another important biblical commandment regarding forbidden foods is that of consuming blood. This is something that God even tells Noah and his sons after the flood. Do not eat the blood. Even though that we are allowed to eat animals, eating blood is forbidden. Because, as it says, the blood is the soul. It is the life force and the vitality of the animal. And we should not eat the blood. There is a Jewish tradition that says that we must salt our meats in order to increasingly remove the blood from the meat. However, this is not a biblical commandment, and you are not required to salt your meat. So long as you drain the blood and wash it off, and make sure that there's no blood in your meat, there is nothing to worry about. And so you now have a very clear picture of which animals you're allowed to eat and which animals you're not allowed to eat. So, depending on the menu, you would skip the lobster, you would skip the crab, and you would order the salmon. You would skip the pork, and you would go with the chicken, because chicken is kosher and pork is not. There is a rabbinic idea of shechita, which means a special ritual slaughter, which the rabbis say that if an animal is not slaughtered with this particular ritual, then it is not considered kosher. There is absolutely no biblical basis for this. This is not a law that is part of God's law, and therefore just serves as another way to limit people as they go about with their business. And so pay no heed to that law and just focus on what is the animal that you're consuming. Is it a kosher animal or is it a non-kosher animal? Additionally, there is a commandment regarding meat and milk, and that is, to quote the Bible, "Do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. So you shall not cook a child in the milk of its mother." Now literally this commandment would only be referring to cooking the actual child in its biological mother's milk. However, traditionally this has been understood to be more strict. And if you want to take this law to the nth point of its strictness, you can say that you may not cook meat in the milk of its same species, because it's metaphorically cooking the child in its mother's milk. So you would not be able to have a cheeseburger where you have cow meat with cow cheese, which is milk, being melted onto that. However, let's say you were to go cross-species and you were to have cow meat with sheep's cheese. I couldn't see that being a problem because that is not its mother's milk. Clearly, when it comes to birds and fish, this law would not be applicable at all because birds and fish do not make milk. So you can have chicken parmesan because never are you going to be cooking a chicken in its mother's milk. Furthermore, the rabbis say, for no apparent reason, that you would have to wait anywhere between 1 to 6 hours between eating meat and milk. This as well is a complete farce because the commandment is do not cook them together. So long as they are not cooked together as a dish and you are eating them separately, there's absolutely no problem with this. And finally, just to illustrate to you how far the rabbinic laws can go away from God's laws to the point of the absurd, the rabbis prohibit food that is cooked by a non-Jew, or bread or milk from a non-Jew, or wine that is made from a non-Jew. And all of this is simply just to create distance amongst humanity and for the Jews to hold themselves away from the non-Jews when it is not representative of God's laws. Because in God's laws, we must follow what He says to do and not what people say to do. And so, if you were to go to a restaurant and you were to order food that is kosher, do not be concerned by the laws that state from the rabbis that if this plate was used previously for a non-kosher dish and now you're serving a kosher dish on the plate, well, now it's like seeped into the plate or something. This is not actually valid, and nowhere in the Torah does it say that kosher has to do with the plates and the vessels. In fact, kosher has to do with what you're eating, and so long as you're careful with that, that's what really matters.